Hi, good afternoon and welcome to Social Enterprise Futures Conference. Thank you so much for joining us today for what will be an inspiring and informative afternoon. The theme of today's session is From Grassroots to Global. My name is Paula Gainster and I'm the co-founder of the Sewing Rooms, an award-winning social enterprise based in Skelmersdale, Lancashire. But today, I have the distinct privilege to interview the amazing Patrick Grant. Patrick's career in fashion has seen him revitalise the Savile Row Taylor, Norton & Sons, and revive luxury menswear brand Etorts, as well as launch Hammond & Co. in partnership with Debenhams, which incidentally was the most successful designer collaboration in the department store's history. In 2016, Patrick launched the Social Enterprise Community Clothing, CIC, which has a simple goal: to sell great quality, affordable clothing, and by doing so, create great jobs and help restore economic prosperity in some of the UK's most deprived areas. Patrick has collaborated with and consulted for many fashion brands, including Christopher Kane, Christian Louboutin, The Couples, Rag & Bone, John Lobb, Barbour, and Cartier. He won Menswear Designer of the Year at the British Fashion Awards in 2020. Patrick is also a media commentator on sustainability and manufacturing, and he's best known as a judge on the hit BBC series The Great British Sewing Bee. In 2013, Patrick was made Honorary Professor at Glasgow Caledonian University School of Business and Society. In 2016, he was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and in 2017, he was awarded an honorary doctorate by Heriot-Watt University's School of Textile and Design. In 2018, he was named co-chair of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales' educational charity, Future Textiles, and in that same year, he gave a TED Talk about his social enterprise, Community Clothing. Throughout 2020, Patrick was heavily involved in Britain's response to COVID-19 pandemic, and production at his Cookson and Clegg factory switched to protective wear for NHS and other healthcare workers. Led the highly successful Big Community Sew campaign. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us at Social Enterprise.
I feel like that went on far too long, Paula, but I'm glad we got there in the end. Sounds like far too much trumpet blowing.
Well, it's so impressive, Patrick, and I just can't tell you how excited I am to be talking to you today and to hearing all about your social enterprise journey.
Well, yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm going to launch straight in with the first question. And Patrick, we want to learn from you today about the community clothing story.
Yep.
So what was the motivations and inspiration behind you setting up community clothing, and what are the problems community clothing is trying to resolve?
Thanks, Paula. Well, very simply, I've spent the last 16 years working in textiles, and before that, I had a great interest in it. I did a material science degree as an undergraduate and studied a bit of textiles there, but in the manufacturing side of it. My granddad worked in textiles. I've got great granddads that worked in textiles, and I've always travelled. My parents took me on holiday to places like the Isle of Harris and the Scottish borders. Actually, my grandparents lived in the Scottish borders, so I grew up around these areas where textile manufacturing was a very significant part of what provided jobs and also provided the glue that bound all of these communities together. I think great manufacturing businesses play an incredibly important role in society, and I think the loss of a lot of manufacturing jobs here has created social problems that are costing us lots and lots of money elsewhere in society. I think if you look at where the jobs in the textile industry have gone in regions like this, not an awful lot has stepped in. I'm talking to you from Blackburn today at the Cookson and Clegg factory, but not a lot. When I look at areas like the Scottish borders, Lancashire, Yorkshire, you see the huge economic rift that the loss of textile and garment manufacturing jobs have created. I mean, we've lost 1.5 million jobs. We used to employ about 1.6 million people making textiles and clothing in this country, and the number now is officially 94,000. I think that is a stretch. I suspect it's a lower number than that, and the loss of those jobs have ripped communities apart, and they've put lots and lots of people on the dole. And we know that when people are on the dole, healthcare costs go up, crime goes up. There are so many knock-on effects to this loss of manufacturing, and for a long time, I think successive governments have only really been interested in manufacturing that they felt somehow was kind of space age and sexy, and the idea that they should support manufacturing of everyday products is something that both Labour and Tory governments have not got behind. And I think that's an enormous shame, because we all need to wear clothes, we all need to eat off plates and use cutlery and sit on chairs, and all of those things could be made at home very efficiently and very cost effectively with very advanced manufacturing businesses. Advanced manufacturing doesn't have to just be space age products. Advanced manufacturing can be everyday products made in a very efficient, state-of-the-art way. And I've always loved these factories, and I've always loved the atmosphere in factories. I started work not far from where you are in a factory in Wiston for a big blue chip multinational company called BICC, and we had 35,000 employees in the northwest of England. All of those jobs have gone. We manufactured fiber optic cables, telecom cables, power cables across 5 or 6 different locations. We were in Prescott, Wiston, Lee, Helsby, just outside Wrexham. But yeah, those jobs are gone, and I feel like the jobs that manufacturing businesses provide are great jobs for everyone. They are not just for those people that shine academically at an early age. They are for people of, they're for late developers. They're for people who are less academically inclined. They provide support. They provide community. They provide leadership. They provide mentorship to people of all ages and all backgrounds. And they also, I think very importantly, they bring communities together. When you look at the population that exists within a good factory, they are all ages, all ethnicities, all genders, all religions, all races. They all work together. They share, they break bread together in the canteen at lunchtime, and that brings communities together. So I feel very strongly that the loss of a strong manufacturing sector has had so many negative effects that we haven't really counted for yet. And so this is a very long-winded way of answering your question. Over the past 15 years, I have been involved with lots and lots of fantastic factories in the textile sector. So spinners, weavers, dyers, finishers, knitters, garment knitters, jersey knitters, sewing factories, print workshops, textile weavers, jacquard weavers, hand weavers, amazing stuff everywhere. And as each year passed, another one would disappear, and another one would disappear, and more people would lose their jobs. And I mean, I suspect that in the time that I've been working I don't know how many thousands of people have lost their jobs in the textile industry. But I wanted to do something to stop that decline and to reverse it, if I could. And the great problem that we have in this country is that the majority of our clothes are made somewhere else. And the majority of the textiles that our clothes are made from are also made somewhere else. About 2% of the clothes we wear in this country are made here. Now, if we went from 2% of the clothes that we wear being made here to, say, 10% of the clothes that we wear being made here, and overall we need to be buying less and buying better. We need to buy better clothes that last longer, that are made out of materials that are not as harmful to the planet. If we switched from buying 10 cheap things that are made somewhere where people get paid nothing and the materials are genuinely awful and are destroying the planet, to buying one good thing that was made here out of good stuff where people got paid well, not only would we massively reduce our carbon footprint, but we would start to rebuild great jobs in communities that are on our doorstep. So that is the idea behind community clothing. It is an employment creation scheme. And it is also about trying to help build a pipeline of people who want to come into the industry, because there's no point just creating jobs in factories that nobody wants. We have to start educating people about how great it is to come and work in manufacturing.
Exactly.
And to build a pipeline of people of all ages who want to come into this industry, who want to come and enjoy making something great every week. And it's about also making really, really good quality clothes that are made out of good stuff and made by people who are well paid and have a great employment, have factories with great employment standards. Make that clothing affordable to most people, because today, sadly, good quality clothing that doesn't cost the earth is too expensive for most people to be able to afford. There are very good quality clothes available, but they're really blooming expensive.
Yeah.
So it's about making an affordable everyday option, providing an affordable everyday option to consumers. And by consumers making that choice to buy fewer but better things from us, rather than a load of bad stuff from somebody else, they're going to help not just create jobs, but rebuild, we think, a whole system. Because once you start to build businesses back up, you start to increase their efficiency, you increase the amount that they're investing in technology and machinery and training and new people, the overall efficiency of these factories rises to the point where their costs come down, which means they can start to access more of the market. And eventually you get to this lovely kind of virtuous circle where not just businesses like mine, but all sorts of businesses can start to make things in the UK again. And that, I think, is a really good thing. So that was it. In a very long-winded, that took me about 20 minutes to answer that question. Let's hope I don't take so long in the next one.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering, with regard to what do we need then to create those jobs, to get people ready to take up those opportunities within the manufacturing of textiles and fashion and design? What do you think the barrier is?
Well, I think I've just seen a little question on the side there, which I might just address before it disappears. There is this feeling, there is this argument that is put forward by the fast and cheap fashion industry that the jobs that they are creating in developing nations are somehow good jobs, and that people are being lifted out of poverty by this work. I don't buy that for a second. Firstly, the wages they are being paid are sub-poverty level wages. I've seen the pay grades on the desks of HR directors in India at good factories where people were being paid the equivalent of about 80 pence a day. We know that wages in many places, including places like Bangladesh and others, are incredibly low, less than $50 a week. $50 a month, American dollars, and often considerably less than that. But more importantly, the fashion industry now has no loyalty to those manufacturers and to those countries. So as soon as people's wages start to rise, those factories will move on again. And we've seen it We've seen it time and time again. We obviously saw a move from what happened in the 1970s was that all of our textile manufacturing and garment manufacturing businesses started to consolidate. They became very, very big. We went from a lovely system of small local capitalism where the owners of all of these businesses lived in the towns. They cared about the people who worked for them. They cared about the community because they lived in it. Their kids went to school there. They shopped there. You know, you had this lovely system where any profit that was made kind of worked its way back into the local community. If they had surplus money, they'd pay for a school, or the money stayed local. It's got spent locally. And then in the 70s and late 60s, 70s and early 80s, we had this consolidation and this, you know, all of a sudden the businesses were being owned by shareholders who had no vested interest in the community, they had no vested interest in the business itself. They just were looking for profit. So the first thing they did was they consolidated all these little factories into big factories. And then very quickly they said, you know what, we can just move this elsewhere. So they moved it, first of all, to Hong Kong. Then Hong Kong got too expensive, so it went to China. And now China is too expensive, and it's moved to Bangladesh and Vietnam and Cambodia and others. And now they're getting too expensive, and people are starting to look at manufacturing in Africa, wherever there is very slack labor regulation and people can get away with paying people badly. So I don't buy this idea that actually it's helping people out of poverty. The only way it can do that is if people get paid well. And the only way to do that is for the cost of clothes to go up and for us to consume less. But that, by the way, is the way we fix the very big issue that we've got in the fashion industry, which is that, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10% of all greenhouse gases are created by the fashion industry. We are a very, very big polluter, and we're a big part of the climate problem. So we need to consume a lot less, and we need the things we consume to have a much lower footprint. And the ways of doing that are by making good stuff, making it locally. Anyway, sorry, I feel like I haven't answered that question. In fact, I feel like I haven't even really begun to answer that question. So remind me.
Okay, well, it's about the levelling up, really. How can we
preparing people.
Yes.
Well, I think we need an education system that is fundamentally a little bit different to the one we have today. I think we have to go back in schools to preparing people for a series of jobs that are far less. I think we've got to focus at the moment that is too heavily academic. I think we need to provide kids with an education that is broader. I was very fortunate at school. I had art classes, I had pottery classes, I had woodwork, I had tech, I had all sorts of stuff that wasn't maths, physics, and chemistry. And I ended up being an engineer, and I ended up doing what I'm doing. But, you know, the ability to think in different ways, and for you know, there were kids at my school, and I was lucky. I went to a couple of schools that were academically pretty decent, but there were still kids in my school who clearly weren't going to be lawyers and doctors. They had different skill sets, and I think we need to provide an education that, firstly, that allows people an opportunity to develop their brains and their skills in a broader way. But also, I think we have to stop stigmatizing working in manufacture. You know, we have to sell the idea of working in good factories as a good thing. And in a funny way, you know, in the 15, 16 years that I've worked here, there's been a kind of upswing in people. You know, there's been an upswing in value of craft jobs. So if you're a person that sits in a shed in the woods making axes by hand out of, you know, steel and wood, and you're sort of on a pedestal, and great, because those are amazing jobs. But I think what we need to do next is to celebrate all the people that do that in a collective way, you know, rather than just one individual, one thing. And so craft jobs have had a huge kind of upswing in firstly in respect and credibility, but also in interest in people wanting to get into them. We need to do the same thing for jobs in manufacturing, because they are fun. They're fun places to come and work. You know, you've got a family of mates around you. You come, you kind of make something cool. You kind of, the bell rings, you have a cup of tea, you have a little chat, you get back on, you do your stuff. But, you know, the factories that I go to, mostly the people that work there love working there. They're very proud of what they make. They're proud of the job they do. I go to some factories that actually, are some of the coolest workplaces ever. I've been particularly actually in the car industry, where obviously they've had generations and generations of continued investment in what they're doing. But we need to put that same effort and emphasis behind all sorts of jobs like this, because actually they are good for lots of people. They're very good jobs for lots of people. And of course, the more people that do it and the more we invest in it, the more economical it becomes. And at the moment, there are certain pieces of clothing where, it doesn't take that many minutes. If you've got a state-of-the-art factory with all the best kit, the best trained people, you're beautifully laid out, you're really well organized and incentivized, and you've got your Kaizen and you've got your lean manufacturing principles and all this good stuff that happens in the best factories. Actually, you can make clothes efficiently and well to a really lovely standard and be completely traceable. You know exactly where everything gets done. You can know where the jersey comes from, or where the cloth is woven, where it's spun, which fields the cotton is grown in. That kind of traceability allows customers to feel certain that they're not supporting something awful. And a lot of clothing, I think it's something like 350 million barrels of oil get used every year to make the clothing that we wear. We made 100 billion garments globally last year. It's absolutely bananas. And we don't know what, half of this stuff is highly toxic and nasty.
And goes to landfill.
And most of it is made by people who really aren't paid very well at all. So we need a change of emphasis. We need to make people grow up in towns like Blackburn and others. Just like, I can't wait to go and work at Community Clothing at the clothing factory, because it's really cool and it's really fun. That's how we do that. I don't necessarily have the answer, but I think continued kind of evangelism for great jobs and great manufacturing is part of the answer.
Yeah, it's great to hear that, Patrick, because part of what you're saying, I just feel that's what the sewing rooms, my social enterprise, is all about. The women that we work with are they love coming to work. They love the creative things. So they get involved in designing products, and they take whatever it is we're making right the way through from the beginning to the end. And as you say, they have break bread. It really is. It's a great industry to be involved in, and I feel it has huge potential as we move forward, especially in leveling up and bringing quality jobs for local people, so they can really have pride in what they're doing. And it's a great industry to be involved in.
It's something that we've got a huge, long history of. We, at one stage, about 60% of all the world's cotton textiles were made, along the edge of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, which runs just down the bottom of here. We not only, and I think we've always been innovators in this country. And I think now, interestingly, we've got to a point where I did a talk at COP26 last week. It's a fringe talk with the British Fashion Council and the Prime Minister's office, the GREAT campaign. But it was all about how Britain's textile and fashion industry can innovate to solve the very significant problem. It's absolutely balmy that something like fashion that we actually don't need. We all need to eat to survive, but we don't need fashion to survive. But something that is a luxury should cause 10% of all the world's greenhouse gas emissions is bananas. And I think there is a small but growing number of people who are aware of this and have decided to make changes in the way that they consume their clothes. And that's lots of simple things. And actually, the interesting thing is, all of this can be done and actually save money. We don't need to spend money to do better in fashion. We need to buy fewer things. We need to keep them for longer. We need to learn how to repair them, and we need to be proud of wearing things that are repaired, and rather than ashamed of things that are repaired, we need to wear clothes and until they wear out, which my mother does all the time. But also, it doesn't mean that we need to stop having new things to us, because there is a world of secondhand clothing out there that already exists. I mean, if you think, if we made 100 billion garments last year, I mean, it's a staggering amount, and that's 60% up. Some estimates are 100% up, 60% up. If we take the lower end of that, 20 years ago, we were producing, we're producing 60% more now than we were 20 years ago. So if you work that number out and you just do it in a straight line, it means we've made something like 1.7 trillion bits of clothing in the last 20 years. Now, there are 7.5, 8 million people on the planet. That's a lot of bits of clothes per person. Somebody, a researcher at Royal Holloway, told me, I was doing a talk there, and they said, somebody told them they'd worked out there was enough clothing on the planet for the next 6 generations of the human race already. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of clothes. None of us going to go naked. But we need to build systems that capture all of this. Most clothes get thrown away. 80% of the clothes we buy, we just bin. Apparently we wear only just a shade more than 25% of the clothes we've got in our wardrobe. So 75% nearly of our wear. There's so many things we need to get back into, reusing clothes and dismantling them and turning them into new things. So it's new clothes from old clothes, not new clothes from new oil-based synthetics that we've had to dig out from under the sea. Anyway, there are so many things that that we can do that actually are free. We just have to think very differently about our clothing.
Yeah, it just takes me back to when I was at school. I got into sewing when I was 14, and my mum bought me a second-hand sewing machine, and that my school uniform was really boring, and so I redesigned my school skirt and made a pair of hot pants, and out of my school blazer, a bolero jacket, and I turned off for school. No doubt.
Were they pleased, the teachers, with your
I was taught by Notre Dame nuns, and they sent me straight home. But I think that was a long time ago. But redesigning is, as you say, is a great way to use up pre-loved clothing. And we run lots of courses for local people to enable them to do that. And there are
quite a few designers. I mean, I know a few. I've worked with some. I mean, we did it a couple of years ago. We did a collection where one of my customers at Norton & Sons, he runs a big clothing recycling business, and I asked him if he could just send me some old cotton denim and old white cotton shirts. And he said, well, how much do you need? I said, well, how much have you got? He said, well, we're talking in the tons here. So a couple of bin bags full would be fine. So we took them and we dismantled them. We salvaged we cut round all the seams, opened them up into flat pieces, paneled them together, pieced them together into big pieces, and then we remade new stuff out of that. So there were seams in odd places, but it was cool, and it was made out of old stuff. And there are a number of designers. In fact, the young woman who won the BFC Vogue Fund last year, Bethany Williams, she makes clothes out of old clothes. I met a young designer who makes trainers out of old bits and pieces. But it's about celebrating all of that. It's not trying to make these clothes and make them look like they are made out of virgin material. It's about celebrating the fact that they are made out of old things and getting people to change their entire mindset about the way they think about the clothes they wear. So it is about embracing, every time you wear something, the more you wear it, the better it is for the planet. So you sort of, it's like you've got to give yourself a pat on the back every time you wear it. And that should be the thing that makes you feel good. You know, we get bombarded with, there's a note on the side there about advertising. I mean, the big fashion businesses spend huge sums of money to make you think that you need new stuff, because that's their business. I mean, actually, broadly speaking, there are two camps here in the fashion world. There's one camp that says, well, we're going to kind of get some new technology, and this new technology is going to reduce the carbon footprint of what we're doing now. But we're just going to carry on pumping out the same volume. We'll just try and do it in a way that's 20-30% less harmful to the planet. And then there's a whole other school of thought that says the whole system is totally redundant and not fit for purpose, and we need to rethink things. And that's kind of where we sit. Even to the extent that this year we went back and grew a field of flax just down the hill in Blackburn on the edge of the canal. We took a bit of disused land, and we grew flax and woad, which used to be grown all over the UK. And it's an amazing, I mean, if people don't know how good linen is for the planet compared to other stuff, just grow some in your garden and see how much care and attention it needs. It needs absolutely none. We planted this field. We didn't water it or irrigate it in any way. We didn't put pesticides or herbicides or any fertilizer down, and it grew like mad. And we harvested it and we dyed it with indigo that we extracted from our woad, and we made this very beautiful piece of linen denim cloth that actually will be much more hard wearing than cotton denim. So there are new ways of thinking about this. We have to, you know, actually a lot of it is about going back to the things we did in the past. My mum and my grandmother, you know, were of the generation that didn't throw anything away. You know, if you know, pants became, you know, old pants became dusters. I mean, stuff became something else. Nothing had a single life. I saw a note there about school uniforms. All my uniforms at school came from the school exchange. That was totally normal. You know, and I had a Harris tweed jacket that I went to school in, and it had patches on its patches, but that was fine because it was just
interesting.
Yeah. But again, I mean, school uniform is a big issue. It's all bad stuff now.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's all synthetic. It's all, you know, it's, again, a lot of it boils down to, all right, we used to wear woolen jumpers to school, but we didn't really wash them very often. Everyone says, oh, you can't wash you can't wash a woolen jumper. Well, firstly, you can wash a woolen jumper. You just put it on a wool wash cycle. But also, we don't need to wash our clothes as often as we do. I mean, we're consuming, again, huge amounts of energy because we've been, again, washing powder manufacturers and washing machine manufacturers have done a number on us. We all think we need to wash our clothes when we've had them on for 5 minutes. I think we just need to embrace being a little bit smellier, and that would kind of help things out a lot. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, we tell people at Norton's not to dry clean their clothes, just brush them. You know, if there's a stain on it, clean it off in water, let it dry, brush it off. You know, it's again, we've been fed this idea of mass consumption all the time, and because that's the economic logic that we kind of
we completely need to start thinking things through completely differently. And I was thinking, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what would you say?
I'm just laughing at Helen Vine, who says she still cleans the window with her old knickers. Well done, Helen Vines.
Fantastic! That's brilliant. What would you say to young people who are considering either a career in textiles or looking to set up enterprise? What would words of wisdom that you would give to them?
Well, I mean, firstly, I am an enormous supporter of entrepreneurialism for sure, and social businesses more than anything else. I think when I did a postgrad degree about 16, 17 years ago. And when I was at my school, Jeff Skoll had donated a huge chunk of money to create a social entrepreneurship center at the business school where I did my postgrad, and there was such an enormous wave of positivity behind social enterprise as the model that was going to save capitalism from eating itself. And I think lots of things have happened that have kind of crushed that a little bit. I mean, firstly, we had obviously an enormous economic downturn in 2007. We've had Brexit, we've had COVID, but I think we need to really get back behind the idea that social enterprise is, for me, it is the most interesting form of business. I think if we look at when business was doing the most good, it was always where the business was sited in a community and the owners of that business were connected with that community in a way that was very, very real and tangible. And because of that, the benefit of that enterprise flowed into that community, either in, just in every way, but I mean, a lot of it financially. But I think we have to go back to a system where the benefit of business is predominantly goes back to the community in which it sits. And I am a supporter of a system of capitalism that allows people to build good businesses with money that they don't have if they've got a good idea. What I don't like is the system that is entirely growth predicated, and where the benefits of the business, the financial reward of that business, are extricated and taken elsewhere for a small number of people to grow increasingly rich on. And I think we those of us who believe in social enterprise, and I think it feels to me like there is once again a growing level of support for social enterprise, particularly I think on the back of COVID. Anyone who wants to do that, absolutely, I think I would recommend it more than I can possibly say. It is so rewarding to build a business where you can feel the benefits of it all around you. It feels amazing to build something that you know is doing good. Now, I know our business is doing good because at least 2 of the factories that we work with are still here and are still alive because we exist. And we know we've created lots of jobs. We know we've created well in excess of 200,000 hours of work. I think we're getting on for a number that's bigger than that. But it's given stability to our industry, to many people in our industry. We work with 31 factories in the UK. Most of them are in Lancashire, Yorkshire, and the East Midlands. Most of them actually in Lancashire, or the old Lancashire, including Greater Manchester and Merseyside, what used to be Lancashire. And it's, it gives us, it makes you feel good. That's all I can say. It really makes you feel good. As for getting involved in the textile sector, again, I would say I think don't go into it with the vision of doing something that feels like the status quo. But firstly, it's very, very difficult to break in to a pretty significant chunk. And the only people that have done it recently have been in the fast fashion end of things. And I'm not sure we should be celebrating that, although they employ a bunch of people, but those people could probably be employed doing something that's less harmful for the planet. But yes, I think if you want to get into textiles and clothing, you have to think about doing it in a way that doesn't feel like more of the same.
Brilliant. It's been absolutely fantastic. We're coming up now to the end of our interview, and I just feel like I could have listened to you for another hour, to be honest, Patrick. You've got so much to contribute and so much to say. But if I just sum up some of the key things that you said was about sustainability and, you know, wearing our clothes a lot more.
Well, again, I think it needs to go beyond sustainability now.
Yeah.
I think we have to build fashion systems that are, and this is what we're trying to do with our linen growing product, actually regenerative. I mean, there's a lot of, we need to go beyond sustainability to actually starting to rebuild the planet. So I think that would be my message, rather than just sustaining. We've got to get to regenerating.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. And is there anything else that you'd like to say before we finish?
Well, I just want to say thanks to everyone for listening. I've been looking at some of the questions and statements in the chat have been catching my eye. Thank you to everyone that has contributed to that chat. There's lots of good stuff. Hi, Rob from Zero Waste Leeds. You're doing a great job. Love what you guys are up to. Oh, was somebody there? The Leeds Community Clothing Exchange, Leeds Uniform Exchange. Oh, very good. Leeds seems to be doing a lot of good stuff, and I think actually Rob has a lot to do with that. But you know, it does give me hope that, you know, we are on a different track. I think there are enough people with not only the ideas, but also the passion and the energy and the drive to make real change happen. And I think the thing we have to remember is that we can all do better without spending more, and that's, you know, and that's not the message that we're getting from the big fashion industry.
Yeah,
they want to keep things going much as it is, and actually that's the last thing we need to do.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And before I go, I'd just like to say to everybody, would you like to continue to stay online, and you can network after we close down? And tomorrow's event is about the role of social enterprise rebuilding communities post-COVID. So once again, thank you, Patrick. And it's been a really inspiring talk from you today.
Thank you, Paula. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.